Good afternoon, everyone. It is Andy Deyell, your Vice President for Institutional Advancement, back with another episode of Conversations with Canisius, our regular web series where we check in with our alumni all over the U.S. and see what they've been up to since their time here at 1180 Delaware. I am joined today by a very special guest all the way from Denver, Colorado, Mr. Mike Henry from the class of 1984. Mike, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. I was recently in Denver and we had a chance to meet, and you gave me a tour of your facility, and I'm happy to share that Mike is the executive director of Lighthouse Writers, a nonprofit in the Denver area. And Mike, why don't you tell our viewers first off, what is Lighthouse Writers and sort of what community you serve?
Yeah, thank you. And it was great seeing you. It was really wonderful to have you in town. So Lighthouse Writers Workshop is a literary arts nonprofit. We're one of the probably 3 or 4 largest in the country. Our mission is to teach the craft of creative writing to anybody who wants to learn, from complete beginners to people with multiple published books, to teach the craft outside of academia so we don't give grades. We're just, as inclusive as possible. One of the other things we do is we use creative writing as a way to build community and connection among people, and allow people to come to terms with the stories that they have to tell. So we do workshops, for example, with at-risk kids, with veterans, people living with a cancer diagnosis, individuals experiencing homelessness or financial insecurity. So it's not necessarily about teaching them how to write in order to get books published, although some of them go on to do that. But the idea is to allow their creativity to be nurtured and to tell the stories and to process the life experiences that they've had.
And, I have to say, Mike, when I came to visit and I saw your facility and everything like that, I just fell in love with what it is you're doing. And I found it to be so mission driven, meaning I couldn't help but say, well, I couldn't help but think that, your life's work is sort of came out of your time at Canisius High School and sort of this mandate to serve others. And I really loved what you were doing, to the point where I was like, man, I got to interview this guy. For our series, I do spend a lot of time in these interviews, interviewing doctors and lawyers and, and sort of what I would call like our typical track of graduates into these sort of, public high powered jobs. But when you find that alumnus who is doing something maybe you've never heard of or heard of anything like, and you can connect it back to this school and this place and the things we learned here. You and I had a lot of the same teachers. I was an English major, so I'm biased about what you do for, a living, in a reformed English teacher. And so I'm really excited to do this interview today and sort of have you share your story with our alumni. And so let's go back in time. If you're a graduate of the class of 84, 1980, you're in 8th grade, you're looking around. Tell me a little bit about how you heard about Canisius High School and brought you to 1180 Delaware.
I love telling this story. So actually, I didn't start at Canisius as a freshman. I went to a public school. I went to Cleveland Hill High School in Cheektowaga for 2 years, freshman and sophomore year. And I just didn't, I was just unhappy. I just didn't fit into that place. It was a good school, good people, but it just was not the right fit. And so my sister had also transferred out and gone to Sacred Heart. So a couple of the guys that she knew from Canisius who were on the cross country team, and I was a runner then. So like Mike O'Rourke, I think Kevin Fanning, he wasn't on the cross country team, but she was friends with them, and they came over to our house one night and they, you should go to Canisius. It turns out also my cousin, Joey Krangle, was going to be a freshman there. So it was just like this kismet. Everybody just started saying, you should really just take the leap and apply. So I got accepted as a transfer student as a junior. And my first experience with Canisius, my fellow Canisius students was meeting Coach Skipper and the rest of the cross country team at the juicery. Did a couple of laps of Delaware Park. And what struck me right off the bat was just how respectful and friendly everybody was, from Coach Skipper down to the captains of the team. And I think what I really loved immediately was that we went out for a run, and this doesn't always happen with teams, but I think it happens with good teams, is that we ran as a group. We ran as one cohesive unit, and we didn't let anybody straggle or get lost. And that was something that I hadn't experienced before, and it was a profound experience right off the bat.
Wow. And so aside from Mr. Skipper, who are some of your other like big influences, the adult influences in your time at Canisius High School?
Oh my God, there's so many people, but I guess Coach Gemmer also, the track coach, he was great. What a character, a great guy. And then, as we talked about, the two English teachers really stand out. Mr. Tudini, in junior English, and then Father Nauman, who was just an inspiration, a little scary, and just kind of I don't know, he was a thespian even in the classroom, right? He performed, and it was always fascinating, and just a brilliant, serious guy. I still think about him often.
Yeah, as do I, as do I. And so
Yeah.
after Canisius High School, tell us a little bit about where you went for undergrad and sort of your path to starting this really cool nonprofit. And then what I like even more about your story is who your partner in this is. So take us a little bit through that post Canisius High School time.
Yeah, so I mean, after Canisius, neither of my parents had gone to college, so they really didn't. We really didn't know how to do that, right? So I applied to a couple different places. I applied to Notre Dame because their football team was on TV, and I eventually ended up at University of Rochester, just 60 miles to the east. Um, and I started out as a biology major. My mother always wanted a doctor in the family. But I was a little bit too spacey and dreamy for that rigor of those studies. And I had always loved English. And some of my friends from Canisius, like Bob Slamman, who graduated a year after me, and Matt O'Brien, who's a little bit younger also, their creativity and their love for art just sort of was something that I'd always, I don't know, I always learned from them, and I always felt like I really appreciated, and it just sort of opened my eyes to a lot of things. I wasn't ready to be an English major, so yeah, I tried biology. When I realized I could not do it, I switched to English, and then I graduated from there. And then I kind of goofed around for a few years in Boston, um, working various jobs. I worked at a publishing company, and then I worked for a large corporation for a while before I went to grad school and got my master's in fine arts. Focusing on writing poetry and nonfiction at Emerson College.
Wow. And then at Emerson, you of course met.
I met my wife, Andrea Dupree. She was a fiction writer. I used to see her around campus, and I found out when her office hours were, and I used to walk by her office um, when she was meeting with her freshman comp students. And we fell in love, and then we decided that we wanted to move to Denver, and we had looked for jobs in academia and really just couldn't find anything. And so we thought, well, let's just teach classes on our own and build community on our own and see what happens. And so we founded Lighthouse in 1997, and it's been growing ever since.
Man. And recently you guys have built what is it, 13,000 square foot
Yeah.
facility, and which you gave me a tour of, which was just a spectacular building. And tell us a little bit like what goes on and in that massive building every day as you guys are changing lives and helping a part of the community that in other cities maybe considered left behind.
So so just today there are a bunch of adult writers, sort of filtered around the building. There are classrooms, and there are less sort of like living room areas, like salon areas, where people can just come and spend time and meet in small groups. We have teenage summer camps right now, so there are about 20 high school students in the building taking classes and writing, which is really great. They're finishing up their week. It's a week-long session, and they'll do an open mic reading in our event space, which can hold up to 200 people. So I'm really looking forward to that. The middle schoolers were last week, and it's so interesting because the middle schoolers, they read, and there's dragons and things like that, and a lot of science fiction. And then the high schoolers come in, and the tone certainly changes. which I love. It's, everybody's going through different stuff.
Absolutely. And so how would you say your time at Canisius prepared you for the work that you're doing now?
I always joke about this, and maybe it's a little crass, but I say if I didn't go to Canisius, if I hadn't gone to Canisius, I'd still be living probably in Cheektowaga in a flat above a liquor store, and that's, maybe not that funny, but it changed my life. I mean, I really I cannot picture having this life without having gone to Canisius. I think what I learned there, from that very first day in running around Delaware Park with the cross country team, was about community, was about caring for your fellow person, your fellow teammate, your fellow student. And the idea of being in service, we talked about this, when you came to visit, being in service for others, in a very calm, measured, but dedicated way. Again, Lighthouse, that's what we do. We are in service of others, and the stories that people need to tell and the creativity that they need to express. I think the other thing, just in terms of like work life, which I didn't really know, and I learned at Canisius, over and over again, was that you work hard, you take it seriously, you take yourself seriously. And if you do any complex decision that you have to make or complex project that you have to tackle, if you do the work, if you do enough research, the answer becomes apparent. And that's something I talk to my staff about all the time, and that's something I learned at Canisius, was you have a hard decision to make. If you do enough research, if you spend enough time, you talk to enough people, the decision kind of makes itself.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And so, that's it's a good segue to the next, thing I want to talk about is like, if you, and it's about advice. You've had you guys have really done some really nice things, and you've had some really great successes professionally, and you've had a nice academic career. If you could give advice to our young alums or our current students, or your younger self even, what's some advice that you would give to young people these days as they're about to start making their way into the professional world?
That's a really good question. To kind of go back to my last answer, I would say, know that what you've been able to accomplish at Canisius, just graduating, shows that you have the skills and the talent to succeed wherever you want to succeed. I mean, Canisius is not an easy place, I think, to graduate from, and you can't take that for granted. And I think also knowing that Canisius has given you the skills to succeed. It's taught you how to work hard. It's taught you how to learn. It's taught you how to be a good human being in the world. And don't forget that. And if things are challenging or anxiety producing and you're not sure what to do next, I mean, go back to what you've learned there at Canisius.
That's great. And I really admire you, Mike, because you've found your why in life, right? Like you and Andrea have found the reason that you're here, and the why that will sustain you, for the rest of your life. So looking ahead, just for the future, what are some of your future goals and plans, as you think about not only at Lighthouse Writers, but you personally and professionally?
Well, thanks for that question. So yeah, it's about me. So let's see. So personally, I want to keep writing. I've published a couple of books of poetry. I've published a nonfiction book. I want to keep writing. It's something that it makes me a better person. It makes me happy. Whether I get published or not is in some ways a secondary question. I think it helps keep me sane. So I want to keep doing that. And I think for Lighthouse is to keep growing Lighthouse. And seeing where literature can make a difference. I think when we started Lighthouse, we were like, we're an alternative to a graduate school program. We're going to teach the craft. We're going to help people get published. And that was all we thought about. And then, like I said before, it's expanded to really more broadly, like how can an artistic endeavor like sitting down and just writing in a journal, whether it's a poem, a screenplay, a short story, a novel, whatever it is, can help you not only get back in touch with who you are, but help you connect with other people. And I think that's something also that sort of reminds me about Canisius, is that education, when it's done well, is it's one kid at a time, you know, and I felt that at Canisius. The teachers, the administration thought about you as a whole person. They didn't think about you as a number or just a part of a class. And that's what creative writing can do. It's one person at a time. You know, in our community engagement groups, which I described earlier, it's, you know, it's 10, 15 people sitting in a room writing. So it's quiet. And that has great value in itself, right? People write down things that they need to tell themselves. Often they are surprised by what they've written down, and they're nurtured by that, right? They learn more about who they are and why they are. And then sharing that writing with other individuals really builds that connection, you know? And so, I mean, one of my big dreams would be to have people write their stories from opposite ends of either the political or the socioeconomic, whatever, different kinds of spectrum, and share that work in order to connect. Because, you know, you see our society getting more and more polarized, and, you know, it's that old truth, which is, you know, never judge a person until you've walked a mile in their shoes, which is really just to say, never judge a person until you've heard their life story.
Mm-hmm. Outstanding. Well, thank you for spending a few minutes of your time, you know, telling us about your career and your journey. I look forward to keeping in touch as the years go forward, and visiting again Denver when I get a chance. And if you ever get a chance to be back in Buffalo, please stop by school here. We would love to. I'd love to tour you around and show you what's happening back at 1180 Delaware. I know it's probably been a while since you've been here, but the campus looks great and the facility is outstanding. So again,
Yeah.
thanks for sharing with us and sharing your wisdom and your story, and look forward to talking again soon, Mike.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right. See you soon.
Okay.